June of 2014, a family in New Jersey bought their dream home. 6 bedrooms, beautiful hardwood floors, a real brick fireplace, a staircase their kids could run down on Christmas morning. $1.3 million. They got the keys on a Thursday. 3 days later, before they'd moved a single piece of furniture in, they got the first letter. And it began. 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. They called the police. They hired private investigators. They brought in former FBI agents. Nobody ever found who wrote it. Nobody ever found out how they got inside. This is the story of the Watcher and the house that was already occupied before they moved in. Westfield, New Jersey. Bloomberg ranked it the 99th richest city in America. It's the kind of town where the coffee shops know your order and the school ratings are on every real estate listing. It's the kind of town where people raise families, where people feel safe. Derek Broaddus had just turned 40. He'd worked his way up to senior vice president at a Manhattan insurance company. He and his wife, Maria, had 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy, all under 11. They'd been looking for the right place for a while. 657 Boulevard was it. It's a Dutch colonial built in 1905. 6 bedrooms, 3 baths, character, history. The kind of house that has a name, that you give a name, because it feels like it deserves one. They put in an offer. They closed in June. They were happy. The way people are happy right before something goes wrong. They didn't move in immediately. They wanted to renovate first. New kitchen, fresh paint, maybe open up the living room. So the house sat empty for a few weeks while they planned. 3 days after closing, Derek went to check on the renovation progress. There was a letter in the mailbox. Plain white envelope, no return address. Typewritten. Addressed simply to the new owner of 657 Boulevard. He opened it in the driveway. I'm going to read you parts of it now. And I want you to notice, as you listen, that this doesn't read like a prank. It doesn't read like a neighbor with a grudge. It reads like something that has been building for a very long time. 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? Have you found all of the secrets it holds yet? Welcome. Derek called Maria. Maria called the police. The police took the letter, ran it for prints, ran the envelope, interviewed the neighbors, asked the Broaddusses if they had any enemies. They didn't have any enemies. They were a family who just bought a house. And then, while talking to the previous owners, a couple who'd lived there for 23 years, something came out. Something that changes the entire shape of this story. The previous owners had also received a letter before they sold. Someone calling themselves the Watcher had written to them too. They threw it out. They thought it was a prank. They didn't mention it to the Broaddusses when they sold the house. Let that sit for a second. Someone had been watching that house, and the family inside it, for at least a year before the Broaddusses ever got the keys. Maybe longer. The Watcher said their grandfather started in the 1920s. Their father continued in the 1960s. The house was built in 1905. We don't know how long this really goes back. The second letter arrived 2 weeks later. This one was addressed to, and I want you to note this, Mr. and Mrs. Broaddus. With a D, a typo, or a correction, or a deliberate choice. Nobody knows. But this letter contained something the first one didn't. It contained details about their children, their names, their ages, their birth order, their nicknames. The watcher referred to them as young blood. And then, will the young blood play in the basement? Who has the run of 657 Boulevard? This is where it stops being a weird letter and starts being something else entirely. The Broaddusses had 3 children under 11. Someone was writing to them about their kids, about the basement, about who had the run of the house. They never moved in. They tried to make it work. Derek installed cameras, 4 of them, covering the front, the back, the driveway, the street. He watched the footage. Maria watched the footage. They started sleeping in shifts, except they weren't really sleeping. The cameras caught nothing. Except, and this is documented, there were several instances where the motion-activated porch light triggered on its own. No person visible, no animal. Just the light going on in the dark, staying on for exactly as long as it took something to cross the sensor, and going off. Like something was there that the camera couldn't see. Now, I want to be careful here. Motion lights malfunction. Insects set them off. Software glitches. I am not telling you this house was haunted. I am telling you what the family reported and what the cameras recorded, and that in the context of everything else happening. Your brain does something with that information. The Broaddusses' brains certainly did. Derek hired private investigators. He hired former FBI agents to conduct a threat assessment. The police ran DNA from the envelope and got a result. The DNA suggested the sender was likely a woman, but it matched no one in any database. No suspects, no leads, nothing. Meanwhile, the community of Westfield was starting to have its own reaction, and it wasn't entirely sympathetic. Some neighbors speculated that the Broaddusses had written the letters themselves, that it was a real estate scheme, that the whole thing was a hoax. Think about, let me tell you what this did to the Broaddus family practically. Because I think we can get so caught up in the horror movie version of this story that we forget it happened to real people with real consequences. They paid $1.3 million for a house they never lived in. They carried that mortgage for 5 years while living elsewhere, paying rent on top of it. They tried to demolish the house and subdivide the land. The town planning board voted against it. They tried to convert it into multiple apartments. Denied. They tried to sell it at a loss. It took years to find a buyer. In 2019, they finally sold. For just under $1 million. They lost more than $400,000, not counting legal fees, not counting investigators, not counting 5 years of carrying costs on a home they couldn't use. So who was the watcher? Here's what we know. DNA from the envelope, likely female. Postmarks, mailed from a nearby town. The writing, described by investigators as literary, well-constructed, educated. Occasional typos suggesting someone agitated or erratic, not illiterate. The knowledge, specific. The children's names and ages. The previous tenants' names. The physical layout of the house. The history of the property going back a century. This is someone local. Someone who knew the neighborhood well. Someone who had been watching, really watching, for a long time. The FBI profile suggests a lone actor. A woman, likely middle-aged, likely local. Someone who walks past that house every day and has for decades. She may still be walking past it today. I want to step back from the facts for a second and talk about why this case is so enduring. It's not the scariest true crime case. It's not the most violent. It's not the most mysterious. There are disappearances, murders, paranormal events with more dramatic details. But the Watcher case won't leave people alone. It went viral in 2015. Ryan Murphy made a Netflix series about it in 2022 that got 125 million streams in its first week. People are still talking about it a decade later. Why? Because it attacks something specific. In America, we have a mythology about homeownership. Your house is your castle, your safe place, the thing you work your whole life toward. It's not just real estate, it's identity. It's proof that you made it, that you're safe, that your children are safe. The Watcher took that mythology and quietly destroyed it. Not with violence, not with blood, with a typewritten letter that said, "You think you own this place, you don't. I was here before you. I'll be here after you." And the horror isn't even the Watcher themselves. It's the question the case forces you to ask. How long has someone been watching your house? How many times a day does someone pass by your windows without you noticing? The Watcher is not a supernatural entity. The Watcher is a person. A real, ordinary person who lives nearby, who shops at the same grocery stores, who drives the same roads, who has a name and a car and a normal life except for this one fixation. That's scarier than a ghost. Ghosts you can explain. Ghosts are supernatural. A human being who has spent 20 years watching a house. That's just a person who made a choice. And choices can be made by anyone. Or maybe, and this is the reading I keep returning to, maybe the Watcher got what they wanted. The letter said the house was waiting for its second coming. Whatever that means to a mind like that. Maybe the new family satisfied the requirement. Maybe they brought the right kind of young blood. Or maybe the Watcher is simply more patient now, and quieter. The Watcher was never identified. No charges were ever filed. The DNA matched no one. The private investigators found nothing. The FBI found nothing. The 4 letters, the only trace of a person who claimed to have been watching one house for 100 years. And the last line of the last letter? I will be waiting.